Hi, I'm Phoebe and today I'm going to be talking with my parents about my life with single-sided hearing loss. How did you find out that I had single-sided hearing loss in my left ear?
So after you were born and we'd had lots of lovely cuddles and we'd introduced you to your gorgeous brother and sister, you were given what's called a newborn screening hearing test, and we were completely shocked when we found out that you failed it in your left ear. Clearly you've never failed anything since.
And how did you feel when you found out that I had hearing loss?
Well, first of all, I think we were really shocked because we just weren't expecting it. You were a beautiful bundle of joy and you looked totally perfect, and so we were really surprised because there's no history of hearing loss in the family apart from in old age. And so we were really surprised. And then our next feelings were, what could we do to help you?
Yeah. What did the doctor say?
So the doctor basically told us that you only had hearing loss in your left ear, and that as your right ear was good, you'd be absolutely fine. We weren't so convinced,
Definitely.
and thought, but only one ear? That's not very good, and wanted to find out whether there was any other help that we could get for you.
And did I get used to the hearing aid, or did it take a long time for me?
Well, you were quite a fidgety, active little thing. You haven't changed. And you would take out, I used to put pretty little bows in your hair, and you'd pull those out and you'd pull everything out, but your hearing aid you always left in. So we could only assume that by you leaving it in and not touching it and not playing with it, that it was actually helping you and benefiting you, and that you liked it.
How was I different when I had my hearing aid in to when I didn't?
So when you had your hearing aid in, you could hear us as we approached you, so you didn't get startled quite as much. And also, even before you could speak, we knew that you responded when you were wearing your hearing aid in when we spoke to you. When you weren't wearing your hearing aid, we could be talking to you and sometimes you couldn't hear us, so you just didn't respond at all.
The doctor did tell you that I'd be fine with one ear. Why did he carry on to find Josephine?
So we weren't convinced that that was the right thing for you, because we always felt that if you had two ears, if there was any hearing there, we wanted to try and make the most of it to give you the best start in life. And it didn't seem to us that the doctors were always thinking about you as a child. What the parents have to do, or what we did, is always think just about their child and work out what's best and push for what is best for the little baby.
That was a good question. I think what we really thought was, does that make sense? Why would we just settle on you hearing with one ear if we had the option of you possibly being able to hear with two? And I think that what we've learnt from you and what we've learnt from Josephine is that actually with the benefit of two ears, clearly your lives had to have been better than it would have been with just one. And we also felt that as you got bigger and more grown up, you would be able to make the decision for yourself. But at that stage, you were too small to be able to do so. So we thought if we were able to help you then, and then if you got older and decided, I don't like my hearing aid, it was then your choice and an informed decision to be able to decide that you didn't want to wear it anymore.
When you were first born, we read up about unilateral hearing loss or single-sided hearing loss, and some of the textbooks and some of the reference books talk about what the consequences are in terms of your inability to localise sound. It means that you have to be really careful when crossing roads, and it will make life for you much harder in the classroom, and perhaps you will be catching up with words later on as you had a bit of a delay to your speech. And so we thought, actually, if there was any chance of doing something that was good, that might lead to improving those things, then as parents, that's what we had to do for our little baby.
How did you guys know that the hearing aid was the right thing to do for me?
Well, I think there were a few things. Firstly, as I've said, you didn't take it out, so that was quite a good indication. And then I think when you were about a year, so you must have been wearing it for a few months, I was always quite careful about checking the battery, but obviously hadn't been careful enough. And you handed it to me, your hearing aid, and I realised that the battery was dead. There was another time when you had an ear infection and you weren't allowed to wear your hearing aid for a little bit. And when you had recovered, you came up to me and you said, "Mummy, please can I have my hearing aid back now?" So I think that was quite a good indication too.
Were you worried about giving me a hearing aid?
Obviously, as your parents, we wanted you to be a normal child as we saw it, and we didn't want you to have to stick out, and we thought that perhaps when you went to school, if you were wearing a hearing aid, you might get bullied a little bit more, or people might be unhelpful, because children sometimes can be like that.
Yeah.
But actually they weren't, and you've been very lucky that when you've gone to school, it's been a subject of curiosity and people have asked you about it rather than anything else.
Exactly.
But I think we also had to weigh up. So on the one hand, well, we were a little bit worried about people saying, oh, what's in your ear? What's your daughter got? Why is she wearing that? And on the other hand, giving you the gift of hearing. And for us, the gift of hearing definitely won. So, Phoebe, can I turn interviewer for a second? Do you think we did the right thing by you by giving you a hearing aid from when you were 9 months old?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know what I do about it. So even when I take it out at night, I notice a massive difference. Thank you so much.
So, do you think you actually benefited from the hearing aid when you were at school?
Massively. And like when my teacher wore the mic especially, because when everyone talks in class, I mean, it's not as if everyone's going to be silent while the teacher's talking, unfortunately. But when my teacher wore the mic, I could actually hear her, and I don't know what I'd have done. I mean, it was really, really helpful, especially like when you were doing classwork and then the teacher started to talk, then I could listen in.
Do you think that you would have been just as good in class if we had listened to the doctors and you had not had a hearing aid and you only went in with one good ear?
No way. I mean, I wouldn't have known all the stuff that I know now because I wouldn't have been able to pick up on all the stuff they've been saying, so I wouldn't have learned as much, for one. And when people were doing classwork, or I might not have known who to listen to.
When your battery has run out, can you still, and you're only using your good ear, can you still hear the teacher clearly?
It just sounds much, much quieter, so I have to really concentrate, and that gets me really tired, and so it will be much, much harder, and that's why I go and change the battery straight away.
Wasn't that one of the biggest differences, actually, that you noticed when you started to lose your hearing in your good ear? What happened?
Oh, I got so tired after school because I was concentrating so hard. I was concentrating so hard in school that when I came out of school, it was like all my energy had been drained out because I'd been concentrating in the playground, I'd been concentrating in class, I'd been concentrating in group work, I'd been concentrating in everything, and it really was really hard.
And I think that's something that even we didn't really get it at first. When you first started to lose even more of your hearing, we didn't know that, you don't think of it when you've got hearing, that actually the effort and the concentration that you do need to put in makes a huge difference to your general well-being in life and happiness, really, because you weren't so happy at that time, were you?
No, definitely not.
And the other big difference you always say to me was your spelling test.
So sometimes I'd mishear the words and I'd write down the wrong words. That has happened, and it's just really confusing. And even in break time, it wasn't really a break because I still had to concentrate. It's like my mind was still being worked very hard. Did people question you about my hearing aid when I was a baby?
So there was definitely interest and people wanted to know what it was. But I think people understood quite quickly, and we just explained, as I think we told you to, that you had loss of hearing in your left ear and it helped you hear better. What about you when you went to school? How was that?
So I think it was sort of the same as you, but to start with, everyone would ask me about it. I mean, I would wait 1 second and then someone would ask me. But I didn't really mind. And after a while, they started to stop, and then I just couldn't really notice it. I mean, I felt completely normal. It didn't really.
Do you notice that you're wearing your hearing aid?
So I noticed that I'm not wearing it when I've been wearing it, and then I take it out. But now I'm sort of used to it, and so it's sort of like you don't notice that you can hear right now. But
And do you think that people could see it straight away?
I'm not sure. You see it straight away?
I think it's pretty well hidden.
Yeah, I agree. Do you remember when I said to you that nobody will ever understand the difference that this has made to my life?
I will definitely never forget those words, Phoebe. We were driving along in the car, and I think it was actually just quite a random statement, not long after you'd had your implant, and you had your hearing aid in your right ear, and you were so much less tired, and you were happier coming out of school, and you just literally stopped and said,
It was amazing.
I can't believe the difference this has made to me, and no one will ever quite understand what a difference it's made to my life.
Did you have any doubts about giving me a hearing aid?
So I think as your parents, what we wanted to do was to do the best for you, and we knew that there was no downside to you having a hearing aid. If you didn't like it when you were a bigger child or a grown-up, you could stop wearing it, but when you were a baby, we felt it was our responsibility to make sure you could make the most of the hearing that you had. And actually, when we looked at the hearing aids, the ones that they have available for children are quite small, and they come in lots of different colours, so you really don't notice that they're there.
What colour was your first hearing aid?
Was it pink?
It was pink, obviously.
Obviously. Have you got any advice for parents that have just found out their children have unilateral hearing loss?
Absolutely. I think that if somebody's child has usable hearing, then to be able to give the gift of hearing is just the best thing that we've been able to do for you. So our advice would be to 100% find out whether you can help, and if you can, don't think about the stigma of wearing a hearing aid. It's massively helpful, and we would have felt that we'd done you an injustice by not giving it to you.
It's really unfortunate that there are kids who've got some background hearing, so they are able to hear something, and hearing aids will help, but they're not given them because at the moment the NHS regards those as expensive, and so it doesn't pay for them if it doesn't need to. So parents need to fight and push for a hearing aid if there is any usable hearing in the ear at all.
Thank you so much for talking to me today about my hearing loss.
Anytime, Phoebe.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.